Try adding me, MJ, if you can. It gives you the option to come into as the guest. I'll let you try to add me first. But I'll do it again here in a second if it don't work for you.
Hello.
There we go.
Finally. Sorry, a bit of a techno dino.
Oh, it's all right. All right, guys.
Well,
so
that's what anyway.
let's get started. Everybody, welcome to Real Supernatural Encounters. Today's guest. If you want, why don't you go ahead? Hold on. You're echoing a little bit.
Pardon?
You're echoing. It's echoing onto the video.
Oh, what do you want me to do about that one? How can I fix that one?
No, actually, it's fine. If you want, let's go ahead and try to see if we can, like, it'll stop or not. But so MJ, why don't you go ahead and just give a little bit of a bio about yourself?
Yeah, not a problem. Hi guys. My name's MJ. It's actually stands for Mary Joy, but I get all manner of stuff up, so it's just a lot easier to call MJ. I'm married with a beautiful man, and I have 4 kids. 3 live in Western Australia and 1 lives here. And Roy's autistic, so he's always had a bit of those extrasensory type things happening and going on. He's always had a very strong connection to his late brother, who passed away. And he's always had a very strong connection to other relatives who've passed away as well. Basically, we live in the old Sparta Courthouse and Hospital, and built in 1870 as a courthouse, jail, constabulary and morgue, and then repurposed in 1934 when they turned it into a hospital. So as you can appreciate, there's been a lot of things going on this land. And sadly, I think there are areas of the land that have been stained permanently, one would say. And there's a bad vibe in just a couple of little pockets of the place. When we do the next episode, I'll give you guys a tour, if you like, a virtual video tour of the place. I just have to get my son to clean up a bit though. He's a little bit of a run around like a French maid. Wish I had the French maid's outfit. Wish I had the body for the French maid's outfit, but hey, anyway. So yeah, I've had a number of different encounters through my time. I'm an empath, so I do pick up on other people's emotions, feelings, ailments, hurts, those sort of things. I also pick up on when they're very happy, and it is very true that happiness can be infectious. We've all been in that situation where someone says something and we all burst out laughing and none of us can stop. And the minute we look at somebody else, we're still laughing. So that's just the way Roy is. He's adorable, but just the way life is. A lot of different experiences, as I said. I've had, well, my partner and Roy have had experiences here in the house as well. But before I got with Scott, I had a lot of different experiences in my life, with near death, yowies, I've had one encounter that I can firmly say was a dogman, and I have one where I feel that he was around, but he didn't make his presence known visually, but he definitely made his presence known audio, like, you could definitely hear. And it is true, they do have that power to be able to effectively freeze you in place. And you can't move. The only way I can describe it is it's almost like being locked in. You're locked into your body, you cannot move, but you want to move. And your mind's screaming at you to move. But for some reason you can't. I firmly believe that has a lot to do with infrasound. And I firmly believe it has a lot to do with some other, gifts, skills, whatever you want to label it, that we're yet to discover. I think as a human race, we can be very egotistical and we can be very self-cocky and self-assured. We know that. There's a lot in this world, a hell of a lot. And I like to refer it to the adage of this here is our imprint, is our time in the world. But there's all this that we don't know about and that we are yet to discover. So looking at my hand each day is a very good reminder of that we're just this tiny little speck in the world, in the universe. There's 93% of our oceans that we don't know about. So there's a lot of things that we don't know about. I ran my own security company. I was quite high up within the industry. I have had staff members refuse to go to places because they were too freaked out, or they had full-on visual audio encounters, or they saw something that they weren't comfortable with, but their mind couldn't wrap around. I'm also 11 years retired from RFS, which is the Royal Fire Service. You get to see a lot in that as well. But I come from a background that I guess you would say is very analytical. It is what it is. When you go into security, it is what it is. When I'm doing a risk assessment and I've got a close protection job, it is what it is. You have to make allowances for the reality of life. But at the same time, there's still so much you're yet to learn. So I have, as I said, 4 kids. We specialise here in breeding schizophrenic farm animals. By that I mean I have a goat that thinks it's a dog, and I've got dogs that think they're goats. And yes, they definitely need a lot of psychological help, my mom, but I love them to death. They're my life, they're my world. You do become very attached to your livestock, and people wouldn't think you get attached to a sheep, but you do. So life's a wonderful journey that you get to ride and see all these different things. And if you're open and if you keep your eyes open, then, and don't believe everything you're told verbatim, by the secular world, I guess you would call it. You've got a sixth sense in your gut. You were born with it. Use it.
Right.
All I can say is to people, go back to using your sixth sense, because you were born with it for a reason. Don't let anybody in this world dumb it down. If your sixth sense is going off for a reason, it's going off for a reason. So all I will say to people is stand firm on your truth, because nobody else knows your truth. So that's basically me.
Well, thank you for giving that bio of you. I guess if you're ready, let's go ahead and start with your near-death experience.
Yeah, not a problem. My near-death experience, the first one that I had, I was 17. We had gone out with the boss for Secretary's Day. It's sort of like one of those days or the year where it's International this day or International that day. Well, this was International Day of the Secretary, so he took us out for lunch. Unfortunately, the place he took us out for lunch, a bit notorious in soaking their food for days in MSG, and unfortunately, I'm highly allergic to MSG, red wine, and pork. Well, we had all of those there. I didn't even know that the dish was a pork dish. We were told that it was chicken. I started feeling weird, got to the bathroom, had the whole physiological allergic reaction going on, hurling my guts up. And I just hit the deck. Hit the deck in the ladies' bathroom, so straight down onto the tile floor. And my body just started convulsing. Once my body reached a certain point, it couldn't take the convulsing anymore, so it just carked it, had a heart attack. My boss resuscitated me a number of times, and I guess, as I've already told you, now I think about it, don't get me wrong, I'm grateful to be alive, really grateful. But I honestly don't know what's more traumatic, that or the picture I've still got in my head of my boss sucking face with me. It was like, ew. So, but anyway, that happened. He resuscitated me, and then eventually an ambulance was called. But each time he resuscitated me, it effectively took him longer to bring me back the next time. And it was just like a cycle. I would convulse, have another heart attack. He'd resuscitate me. I'd come back, convulse, and I was just not there. It was just this long cycle of doing that. The last time that he brought me back, while he was actively trying to resuscitate me, I was literally just sort of semi-hovering in a corner, sort of, watching them and thinking, wow. And at that point, I guess it was like a virtual rope or a virtual hand grabbing out. It's just, I can't really describe the in-between phase too much because I was still not 100% there yet, even though I was out of my body and I could think and everything else. There was still like a bit of residue, I guess, residue attachment. I remember just being in this corner, sort of above the thing, looking, and then he got me back, and then I went again. And when I went again, instead of just hovering and looking, and I guess it must be the universe or our creator's way, I guess, of helping our minds adapt to the fact that we are passing, is you have that sort of time where you can watch what's going on. So your brain can actually register that's what's happening. And I think that maybe, especially in a situation where someone dies very traumatically and very abruptly, they mightn't get that chance to hover and acclimate. And I think that's why the people who have been in that situation, or who are very emotionally scarred, say who have committed suicide or something like that, that's why they sort of, I feel they hang around, because they never got that actual time to acclimate. So yeah, some might know that they've passed, and yeah, there's definitely, I would say, a sector of spirit that wants to hang around because it wants to. But I do believe firmly that there is a very more bigger majority that of tragic deaths that are in that sector, that they don't have that time. And if you don't have that time, I would very much imagine when you hit there, it is a difference. It's very well, I say it's overwhelming, but it's not a horrible overwhelming. It's a wonderful overwhelming, but neither here nor there, it's still overwhelming. And it can be very warming for someone who's just gone through that tragic experience and have to try and get their mind to a process and acclimate that, and now process and acclimate this. It would be, I guess, very confronting. So just before the ambulance arrived, was the very last time that he resuscitated me. But while I was gone, it was like I just then catapulted out of my body. And it wasn't this sort of weird no man's land place anymore. It was just flooded with like a wall of light. And that light just wraps around you. You're not really standing, you're not sitting, you're not flying, but you're just sort of there. And I guess the easiest way to describe it is you're not there in a physical sense, you're there in a energetic sense, as in an energy. When we leave our shell, our vessel, whatever you want to call it, this is just I look at my body as just a motor vehicle to get the core part of me and the part that really matters and makes sense and logically thinks and all the rest of it and has feeling and empathy. I believe that physical shell stays, as we know, but your inner self, your energy. And if you think about it, we're all made up of energy. Even down to buildings, it comes down to a matter of opposing atoms and molecules and making sure you've got the right a mortar or glue to deal with those. But everything, I believe, carries an energy. The more natural earth-based something is, I believe is a higher chance, because the stone tape theory is extremely relevant and extremely true. The spirit can attach themselves to anything. Once you're that spirit energy, you're not restricted or encumbered by that vessel that you just left. So yeah, it was like a wall of light just wrapped around. when that happened, I was aware that there were other presences there, but I hadn't become fully aware of what they were or who they were. All I could feel at that point was there were other energies around me. Now I'm thinking to myself, oh wow, okay, all these other entities, oh, they must be other people that have passed on too, and we're all going together. Not having been there before, didn't know what the drill was, so I was just guessing as to what way it went. But that was only at that point. And it was almost like the minute that I made the question, I said the question out loud to myself, that it just, yeah, you're aware, it's not like I guess they sort of do speak to you, but you are just sort of have this knowing that they are there. Eventually, I believe it was Jesus made his presence known to me. And how I know that that was the case, that it was Jesus, is that his energy was completely different. Absolutely different. And it was like I knew at that point that I could say to him, okay, but I want to see you. And he could have, put on his mask of physical appearance, but I just knew if I wanted that, I could ask it. There was like nothing that I couldn't ask or couldn't say. There was no judgment. And excuse me if I lose it, because even now, I was 17 and I'm nearly 50. Next year I'm 50. Even now it still gets me. And I don't tear up because I'm sad or it's hurtful. I'll be honest, I tear up because I miss it. I was given a choice. I could either stay or I could come back. I don't regret my choice, but when you've had a little taste of that and what can be, and when it's put on a platter in front of you, and you know just how perfect and how wonderful everything's going to be, all you've got to do is say, no, I want to stay. But when somebody stands before you with that power, that energy, that magnificent, that all-encompassing wonder, and you realize that, yeah, he was our creator, who am I to say no to him? Who am I to argue? Because when he started speaking to me, he explained where I was and that I had a choice. It wasn't my time. I could choose to stay with him, or I could choose to go back. And he said that there was more that I had to do and more that I had to accomplish. And he knew he was asking a lot of me because he knew how much pain I was in physically, because what I haven't really gone into is I have cerebral lupus and systemic lupus. And I have Sjogren's disease and a whole myriad of other autoimmune diseases and other diseases as a result of the treatments or the disease attacking something, which then changes it to something else. I was told 30 years ago that I would be lucky to make 10 years. That would be the worst case scenario, but I'd be extremely lucky if I got to 20. I'm now in my 29th, almost 30th year from that diagnosis. So I'm kicking its butt. I ain't going to let it control me. I'm going to control it. Because quite frankly, Anthony, I am too busy to kick the bucket.
Yeah.
Too much going on. So yeah, he let me make a choice if I wanted to stay. And he gave me a taste of what I would be receiving if I decided to stay. And the only way that I can describe it, have you ever had a doona or a blanket, like the blanket behind you there? That was so warm and so soft and made you, and had that, you know, had some beautiful memories attached to it and made you feel so comfortable and so safe and so at peace and so at home. That's how it felt. It was peace, it was joy, it was, but the biggest thing that stood out for me was the love. It was the most complete, and when I say complete, I mean absolutely, fundamentally complete, intense, warm love. It wrapped around you like a blanket, and it filtered into every nook and cranny, every fibre of your being. Sorry, and it still gets me to today, because having had my background early on as a kid, I unfortunately, because my parents, when I was 2, were in a car accident, and as a result of that, because finances, Dad had to go back to work as soon as he was able to. He wasn't fit and ready, but as soon as he could put one foot in front of the other, he had to go back to work so we didn't drown. And Mum was horrifically banged up, and I would spend a week at one relative, a week at another relative, a week at another relative, week at grandma, week at granddad and grandma, and do that rotation. And I did that for years. And when I was at home, there was an elderly couple who were, for all intents, lovely people. But he had a dark side, and that dark side was he liked little girls. That went on until I was 13. So knowing that the taste that I was given that I could have if I chose, I could walk away from all that hurt and pain. It wouldn't hurt me anymore. It couldn't hurt me anymore. If I made that choice to step over the line, it wouldn't hurt anymore. And a lot of people say too that I'll agree totally. I haven't grieved the loss of my parents yet, properly. You know, from the human aspect side of it. But people often will say, you know, you don't seem to get upset when you talk about your parents. You seem to talk about them with a joy and a happiness. And I heard a saying once, and it rings so damn true. And if there is anything that I can impart to your listeners now, is to stand firm on this. Celebrate your loved ones' lives when they've passed. Celebrate them. Don't cry for them. Yeah, take a moment, have a shower, let it all out, but then don't shed another tear for them. Because every time that you cry past that point, every person in heaven's got a candle. How can the candles stay burning if they're being showered with our tears? So if you want that loved one's candle to burn brightly, remember them with love. Remember them and honor their lives. Celebrate them. Remember the joy. Remember the happiness. Because every time you go to a dark place and you cry tears, you're putting your loved one's candle out. And at the end of the day, just out of respect, I wouldn't want to do that to my loved ones. You know, my loved ones mean too much to me. I want their candles to burn so brightly. And you know, it's hard. There are times where I have to fight it. But I look at it from the perspective of, that's me being selfish. And what right do I have to be selfish to them? So yeah, it's like this wall, this blanket, and it just wraps around you, and it's tight, but it's not a hurt tight. It's like when you get a hug from someone and they give you a really nice, firm, welcoming, love-filled, hug that you can not just feel from them physically hugging you, but you feel it in their energy. It's like this absolute beautiful aura that wraps around you when that person hugs you. It's exactly how I could describe what that felt like. It was this beautiful, warm hug that was wrapping around me and falling on every little inch of me, just like that blanket. But it was the softest blanket, the warmest without being hot blanket. That's the only way I could describe it. And to feel that much love, yeah, it's really intense. It's especially when you spend most of your life beating yourself up or having to fight for anything and everything. You tend to beat yourself up a bit. You tend to put yourself down. You know, especially in those quiet times at 2 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep, and everything's just replaying in your head about an incident or an event that's happened, and you feel crappy and you feel unloved and you feel shitty and you'll dwell on it. And it's hard. And I always try to stay positive. But it is so intense and warm and loving, and you feel it in every little fiber of your being, in every molecule, in every cell. And it's like they're vibrating, because there's this lovely warmth tingling all over you. And because there's like there's like an electricity in the air or the environment. And yeah, it was incredible. All I remember is, for the first time in my life, being out of pain, not having any pain. Now, for someone who's been in pain all their life to that point, that's a big thing. That is a massive weight taken off you when you are not in pain.
Yeah.
But you still know that those things happen, but they don't hurt you anymore. You still know that those different things, that events that happened in your life that made you, they can't hurt you anymore. But whatever joy you've felt in your life or happiness, that's also intensified. And I remember looking at his energy. I'm looking down at myself going, wow, well, this is different. I haven't got that old piece of baggage holding me up anymore. This is great. I love this. But the two biggest things that I felt in those moments were peace, absolute peace. Nothing hurt anymore. Nothing hurt physically anymore. Nothing hurt mentally anymore. Nothing hurt in here anymore. It was all gone. It was just happiness and love and peace and warmth. And if you just give me 1 second, I just need to retrieve my little angel dog from my ironing pile. Excuse me, get down, good girl. Come on, you go back in here. Thank you, my darling girl. That's so good of you. Thank you for your cooperation, good girl. Sorry about that. I just don't want my ironing smelling like dog. So yeah.
Go ahead and tell the audience about your Yowies encounter and your Dogman encounter.
Yep. Just going back to that though, he basically said to me, I have a choice. Mm-hmm. I can stay there with him and everything's going to be fine. He wouldn't hold it against me because, as he said, he's always given us that free will to choose what we want to do. And that free will of choice had to come from somewhere. So he said I had stuff that he still wanted me to do. I agreed. It was a big fight because I didn't want to stay. I didn't want to go back. I was happy staying there where nothing hurt and everything was wonderful and all good, you know. Really? You want me to go back there? Come on, man. You know, you've heard me scream and talk to you pretty much all my entire life, and you want me to go back to there? And so I agreed and went back. But it was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. It was probably the hardest decision I've ever had to make. I could stay with this love that's wonderful and wants me and makes me feel great and appreciated and everything, or I could go back there where quite often, 90% of the time, life sucked. But you got on with the job. So yeah, that was basically it. But all I will say is it's, you know, I remember seeing my grandparents over to the side, but again, like an energy form, not so much a physical body, but you just knew it was them. You knew who each one was. And knowing, because I had an extremely close relationship with my parents, my grandparents. And the thought of having to leave them again, that was just like almost soul destroying. That the only thing that held it together was knowing that I was going back to do for him what he wanted me to do. So that made it okay. That made it doable in a situation where if you're put in the same situation but didn't have that up there waiting for you, even though we all do, hypothetically, that would be a real shitty situation to be in. People might say it's more shitty to be in a situation to have to leave what you know is going to give you everything you've ever wanted in life. What's a big thing? To say, okay, you're giving me both these on a silver platter. You're telling me I can have this, but you really need me to go back and do this. Which way are you going to choose? What path are you going to take? And at the end of the day, I just look at it from my perspective, or my perspective alone. I have no right to argue with something that is so encompassing everything, is so all-powerful, is so everything. I am nobody, and I am this. Who am I to argue with that? I'm just this. Who am I to argue with that when I'm only that? I'm a nothing. In the space of time, reality, everything, I'm nothing. I'm just a grain of sand on the beach. With all the other thousands of grains of sand, and we're all just trying to get to where we're going to be. So, as a result of that car accident, when I was home, we lived right on the edge of the bush. I only had to walk past my next door neighbour's house, down a little track between their house and the other one, and I was right there. It was right in the bush. It was beautiful, and I guess it's why I've always loved the bush and why I ended up out here. We're 45 minutes from town out here, and we're in a little valley called Safala. It's the oldest operating, surviving, and still actively running gold town in the world. You could pretty much say that where the gold rushes started, they pretty much started here in Australia. Yeah, prove about the one thing we got ahead of you guys on was the gold. And you cheeky bastards, you didn't waste any time in jumping on the bandwagon, but anyway,
that's the truth.
Not much to do about history. But yeah, so I spent a lot of time in the bush. And the very first memory that I have as a child is standing up in my cot, holding the rail of my cot, not quite knowing why I was woken up. But I looked out my window, and where my cot was positioned, it was, if you could imagine, the cot was here, and the window was there. So it was like on the back corner. It was sort of in a corner, and half was on wall, and the other half was sort of against the window down one end. I looked out. There was, standing right there on the veranda, was a Aboriginal man. And this Dogman. And I remember looking at him and feeling safe, and knowing that if I was with him, I would be safe. But I remember looking at the other thing, the Dogman, and I just knew it just felt, it was just evil. There was nothing good about it. It was almost like you could see a wall of darkness and doom and everything coming at you, and you couldn't stop it, like a cloud, and it was just going to wrap around you if you let it. And over to the side, there was a canyon or what do they call those? The African tribe. Anyway, it was like, she was like an African tribe lady. And Mum would always tell this story that not all the time, but sometimes in my life, if I say fell and hurt myself, I know Mum rushes over, it's all okay, you're all right. Mm-hmm. Mum's got you. You know, let's have a look, da-da-da. And the minute she started going the usual mum spiel that you usually do when one of your kids is hurt or fallen or something or needs help, you know, you immediately kick into that reassuring mode for them. Yeah. I just looked straight in her face and said, I don't want you. And she said, oh, do you want me to go get Dad? No, I don't want Dad. Now, I was around 3, 4 when I said this. We, no offense to you guys, but we didn't do a whole lot of study on Bigfoot or anything like that in preschool, kindergarten. You know, they try not to tell monster stories, I guess. But, yeah, it was full on. And I remember just knowing that was evil and that was not right. That was not right. That was good. And the reason I knew, or I believe I felt I knew this, is because I would always say to Mum in those instances, I don't want you, I want my other mother. And she would just look at me and go, oh, Mother, what the hell are you doing? Do you understand my parents? They were very Anglo-Saxon Catholics. Yeah. Even me talking about this sort of stuff with you now is considered a sin.
Oh, I did not know that.
You know, it's considered it was up until Vatican referendum, it was still considered a sin if a woman went to the doctor and was put onto the contraceptive pill for medical reasons. Mm-hmm. So there's some really nasty, strong biases within the Catholic Church that are all man-made biases. And I look at it from the perspective that who are you to say that you're God's representative on earth? What, did God come down and have a election? I don't think so. That's just ego talking. And I would say to Mum, I want my other mother. Please, I want my other mother. Get me my mummy. I'm your mummy. I'm your mummy. No, I want my other mother. In Africa. And I would say this to her. And at that age, it's not like I had a concept of what Africa was. It wasn't like I was in, say, a higher grading school and you were studying a particular thing as part of the whole component for our HSC exam. It's not like I had any knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I could describe to my mum how my mother looked, right down to the colour of the little beads that she had. And a friend did actually a past life regression and found I had lived there and a couple of other places. I'd had a couple of other past lives. All I can say is when you actively remember that, it's almost like there's a shift in your reality. Up until that point when you actually remember or acknowledge it, you've been living that way, that world, the secular way, being told what to do, X, Y, Z. But the minute that you come to a realization of that, you know that we're not being told the whole truth. And I'm no conspiracy theorist. Yeah, believe me, I'm not running around the Australian bush wearing my tinfoil hat. But there comes a point in time when there's so many things that happen that you can't argue them. You can try and push them away, and you can be an ostrich and bury your head in the sand. But at the end of the day, it's going to hit you hard when you have to come to that realization. And I'm glad that I was lucky that I came to that realization at a younger age, so that as things happened down my life, that I had a better understanding or could have a better grip on them. And so over standing off to the side from my veranda at home was this African lady, and standing next to her was like a yowie. And I always had this sense and feeling of being watched whenever I was in the bush. And at times I would look out my window at home, and behind the house of this elderly couple, the bush sort of curved around behind the next house and then to that path. And then it went down into a big valley and curved right around and met up with both the Warrenora Parkland, the Warrenora River Parkland, the National Park Parkland, and Forbes Park as well. And they all met up and everything. And to understand the bush in Australia, it's our bush, you imagine how with your parks over there, right?
Yeah.
You have pockets of parks, and not all of them are connected. Not all of them have an easy connection, a strip of bushland that connects each of them. In Australia, the majority of our parks are all semi-connected in some way. So there are a lot of our parks that have travel routes that, one lot of animals or whatever can go from there over to there if they need. And ironically, as much as I don't think the people that were building all these settlements and everything here were, and the cities and that had it in the forefront of their mind, but it's sort of ironic because it's how the Aboriginals wanted the bushland to be, because they firmly believe that the bushland's all connected. So that's the first time I actually saw the yowie was that age. And then when I started going playing in the bush on my own lot, I would just get this sense of being watched And occasionally I would have a couple of moments where I felt like I had to get out of there. It's just not a nice feeling. You just know. And the energy in the place shifts at that time. And I'd play and I'd wander around, and then, but I'd know that there was sort of something near or walking near me, because I'd know when, I would be sitting playing with the rocks, or I'm a big rock hound. I love collecting all sorts of different quartz and those sorts of things. Like, put me out in a rock field, it's like heaven on earth for me. I will sit there and I'll pull out all the bits of crystal and that will actually, I feel I have to pick that one up. I have to have that one. There could be a field where I might only feel like I've got to pick up one. And there could be a field of thousands of rocks, or crystals, or quartz pieces, or that, because as you know, with gold, it follows quartz and things like that. We're built on a massive quartz reef here, so I'm in heaven. But yeah, I would be sitting there playing with my rocks, or playing in one of the caves, or collecting wildflowers to make mum a bunch of flowers or something like that. But you'd know something was there. Another way that you knew, you'd suddenly notice that everything went really quiet. And it's like you're in a vacuum, and all the noise has been sucked out of that vacuum. And you just become aware. And I remember seeing it tall, like near the 8 feet mark. And it was just really tall and lanky, but you could just tell it was strong the way that it moved. Yeah, the distances that it could cover in short amounts of time were bizarre. You couldn't really wrap your head around it. But I never felt in danger with that. I never felt like I was threatened in any way. And over a period of time of, running in, of seeing him period of time here and there, and it's not like he would sort of walk right up to you or anything like that. He would still stay off a little bit in the distance, always sort of keeping that distance. And I guess if you think about it, all they've seen is us running around shooting each other with guns for 100 years or more. And, that humans can be very nasty, vindictive, horrible, spiteful people. And it's true, we can be. At times we can be downright evil. But I never felt anything of a negative or dark nature from him. It was him. I do remember, very well endowed, that's for sure. He'd put some of these porn kings to shame, that's for sure. But Harry, you only really smelt the odour if the wind was blowing your way. But it wasn't a real bad odour. It was more just a really sort of a dark, dank, earthy smell, like something, something's been buried in the ground and you dug it up. that sort of smell. And he was incredible. Yeah, just the strength, breaking limbs off trees and all sorts of things. It was just incredible. And you'd know that when you saw the branch, that this had to be something powerful and strong that was able to rip that down. And one thing I did notice, that when they break something, they don't just break it. You know how if we got a fire, we're having a fire, and you crack that branch on your knee and break it cleanly. It's always a twisted motion. They twist it off. Because the ends always look like it's been twisted, as if you've got, something and you held one end firm and twisted, and you end up with that shardy, ribbony effect. Well, it was like that. And I don't know if I was supposed to or not, but I was on my own. I didn't have anybody else around, so what the hell? I play amongst their structures. They had some pretty incredible structures in the bush down near the caves and that. But the biggest thing that I would always notice was just the deafening silence when it was around. That really spoke more to me than anything else. Was just everything went silent, and it was almost like as if everything else in the bush thought if they shut up and went quiet, it wouldn't know where it was. But it's not the case. I don't know how they do it, but imparted to me, because he never verbally spoke to me as such, except, the only vocalizations were some grunts or some, low growls. And if he did that, you could feel that went right through your body. It literally shook your fibers. And there was only 3 times that I remember vividly him growling. And I couldn't say it for sure because I didn't visually see him, but something large, something massive, and something heavy took off running the minute he growled. And yeah, quite frankly, I believe that the Dogman was around at that time. And for whatever reason, the Yowie and there's 2, for people to understand, there's 2 types in Australia. There's your regular paddy looking type. Although their hair, they can, in some instances, depending upon the area, their hair can be a lot sparser. If they're in a more colder climate area, their hair tends to be more thicker and more over their body. But yeah, it was just bizarre. And I just felt like even though he was a juvenile, was protecting me from him. And it was weird. But at the same time reassuring, because I never felt afraid about just going and playing in the bush on my own. If anything, I loved it. I felt at peace. And I felt happy. And I could sit there, and I know this might sound ridiculous, but I had this particular tree. And I called it my talking tree. This big tree. It had a big hollow scoop in the middle, near the trunk base. And I'd sit there when things were really shitty and I'd scream at that tree. But yeah, I never felt fear. I never felt afraid. I just felt like I was being watched, like I was being protected. And I would think to myself, but and I remember saying to him one time, he was off over there, and I remember looking, going, I know you're there, but why are you there? What's special about me? And you don't get a spoken verbal answer back. And the only thing I remember is it being put in my mind, thinking, him saying, because it's my job. And I'm going, why? Who told you you had to do that? And didn't get an answer on that one. And it was almost like, I guess he would give me answers to things or questions that I asked when he felt that I was ready to hear it. I firmly believe, because they've been around for years, yeah, I would look out my lounge room window, and my lounge room window looked straight across the road to the couple's place. So it wasn't like I could sort of avoid that. Every time I went out my front door, there was the old couple's place across the road, and it sort of was up higher than the others and on a bit of a hill. So it sort of thumped you in the face when you could not avoid looking at it. I remember sitting there one Christmas looking out the window past, because we had this horrible, I love it, but I hate it. It was a tinsel tree, and we had it for years. And I always was envious at everybody else's trees. We were all pretty and everything. But we'd put up our tinsel tree. I remember looking past the tinsel tree and seeing him standing on the rock outcrop behind the old couple's house. And I would often see him there the whole time that we were at Loftus. But I thought he'd disappeared when we moved from Loftus. I thought I wouldn't ever see him again. And I thought it was done. I didn't have my protector anymore. I just had to sort of suck up life and try and do the best I could. And I didn't see him for ages, and I honestly thought he was gone. He'd moved on. I would never see him again. The chances of me ever finding him in particular was nothing. It wasn't going to happen. It'd be like me trying to find one drop that just got dropped into the ocean. He could be anywhere. And if he's got the power to do all these things and literally speak his word into my mind directly rather than actually verbalizing them with a physical mouth, that was a spin out. And if he could do that, what else can he do? So I thought I'd lost him. And I'll be honest, for a long while there, I was really heartbroken about it. Because even though we didn't actually physically pay, he was always standing at the back keeping an eye and sort of thing. He never got right up close. Don't blame him, look at what we are as a species. But I grieved that he wasn't in my life anymore around. Well, that was a pretty stupid thought, wasn't it? Pretty stupid move. Grieving about it, because all that did was send a whole big ball of energy out into the cosmos right to him. Because I firmly believe once they connect with your mind, even if it's like a volume switch and it's turned right down, they're always there. Even when you don't think they are, they're always around. Even if it's maybe not on this plane, if they're around on a different plane but still sort of hovering and checking in on you, yeah. Shoot forward. And I got married, and my husband and I at the time set up our own security company. During the course of doing that, one of the contracts that we got was Warrenora Dam. And I think if any, I've had some discussions with David about this, and I've had some discussions with Scott about this. But if your viewers look at David Pilates, 411 CAM project, really incredible. And they firmly believe that, they can, just by your thought, you sending that thought out into the cosmos actively, can be enough. It's like picking up a telephone and ringing them. Once that connection is established, it's always going to be there. And I think all the crap that we're told today is really just to dumb that down. Because as long as that's dumbed down, we're just little ants that can do whatever they want. Well, I ain't nobody's ant. So I had, I would tell my parents, and I would tell my dad, and I'd tell my mum, and my dad would say, don't talk about these things, it upsets your mother. Mum would say, you don't talk about these things and you don't acknowledge these things, because if you do, you're sinning. So it was quite lonely knowing. It was lonely in one way, knowing that I couldn't really talk to anybody else about what was going on, because they would either tell me I was a sinner or a kook. But on the other hand, it was also magical. Because, hey, out of all the people in Australia, out of all the people in the world, you chose to connect with me? Wow. Really? Wow. So yeah, that was, I always knew he was there, but I mistakenly thought that once we moved, very secular thought, once you move, you lose touch with people who you knew then in that area. Well, it was like that same thought process. I thought, if we moved, I'll lose touch. I won't see him. I won't have him. He won't be a part of my life. So as I said, shoot forward. Husband and I set up a security company. 2 nights after we took on doing Warrenora Dam, and this is one thing that is actually very much a big discussion point with Dave and Scott and Steve from How to Hunt. A lot of these sightings, a lot of these occurrences, and a lot of where you will see these beings is often very much associated or close to water. Now, the bush that was at the back of my place at Loftus before we moved, it had a Forbes Creek running through it that connected to the Warrenora River, which was a big river. There's a lot of sighting reports of down that Warrenora River way. And the one time that he ever came very close to me in that bush was when I was bitten by a snake. In Australia, we have, I think it's 4 of the most deadliest snakes in the world. And I was bitten by a grey steelon. And nasty, makes you feel really yucky. But he didn't physically pick me up or place me in a spot. He made enough commotion in the area that it caused some neighbours to come out of their home. And I was able to call out, and they came and took me to hospital. But if he hadn't have done that, there is no way I would have had anybody come out. So yeah, flash forward, we've got the company, they're doing the dam, we're on our second night, our employees come back and said to me straight up, I'll still work for you, but I'm not doing that run ever again. I'll do any one other run, but I refuse to do that run. And if you put me on that run, I will quit. I said, why? He said, do you know what the hell is out there? I said, talk to me. It's like a man on steroids. And he's got to be from Greece because he's covered in hair. I went, oh, okay. There was one particular Yowie in the area that I lived in, and he was quite often, he was a cheeky bastard. He would quite often deliberately go and freak people out just so they could see him, just so that he could mess with their head. Never did any harm. He was just a prankster. It was just all for his, I guess you'd probably call it, own sick Yowie amusement. But he caused a bit of havoc at times. And I said, describe it. And he described it, and I went, oh, you've run into old Cinnamon. That's what we called it. Everyone called it was, oh, Cinnamon's back. Because the hair was like that colour of cinnamon when you grind it down. And so, yeah, he point blank refused. And I said, okay. So from that point on, I always had to do the dam. I took over that run, and I always did the dam. There was 2 other blokes that would go there. One was under sufferance, but he'd do it. And the other one didn't care, and he believed in them as well. So it didn't bother him. He said he had a trick that he would get to the gate. Before he even took the keys out of off the run board, he would and put it in the lock. He'd get to the gate and he'd say, I have a job to do, guys. All I want is to get this job done. Let me check the buildings. Don't shit scare me. Or we're going to have trouble. You know what I've got on my hip. I know you don't like it. I'm not here for any harm. I'm just here to do my job. I won't bother you. I won't bother the rest of you group. And he did that every time before he went in. And every time, nothing happened. The one night that he was in a rush and didn't do it, he had rocks pelted at him, sticks thrown, never actually hit him as such, but landed pretty bloody close to him. Rocks and sticks thrown onto the building, all sorts of havoc. And if you ever get a chance, look up Warrenora Dam on Google, because it's a big dam and there's a lot of bush surrounding it. It's literally smack dam in the middle of the bush. So yeah, but I'd do the run, and this guy played games on me. Never threw anything at me, but he just played games on me. He'd run across the road in front of me, because when you look at Warrenora Dam on Google, you'll see there's this from the gate up here, and the
Hold on, guys. Looks like it's frozen a little bit. It should return here shortly.
there you are.
There we go.
Yeah, so it snakes through the bush, and it's a very long road. It's about a couple of Ks. So I don't know what that would equate to in miles for you guys. But it's a good couple of Ks. I think it's about 5K road, maybe a bit more. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And it seems like you're driving forever. But he would run across the road. And then I'd get to another point and he'd run across the road again, and I'd be thinking, hang on, I'm in a car. And I'm sort of booking it. Because I used to love giving the car a bit of a test on that road. I didn't have to worry about any other people, so I could, hone my defensive driving skills on it. I'm thinking, how the hell did he get down here? Not to mention he's got all that bush that he's got to run through with rocks and trees and God knows what. And you just got from there to there before me? It would just boggle my mind. And he would do things like that, and it was just gameplay for him. And once you get over that initial shock and initial fear, that flight or fight, the flight, fight, or freeze. They've added another one now, freeze, because they've realised that there's actually 3 reactions people have. They will either fight, flight, fly away, or freeze, where they literally freeze up, lock up, they can't do anything. Once you get over that initial bit, you just look with all these questions of why and how, and I would say to him, tell me, teach me. Can you give me the answers? Because using my little primitive of a brain is trying to figure this out and wrap around it, and I can't. So please, will you give me some answers? And they gave you little tidbits, or they would give you little tidbits, but it was like it wasn't their place, or it wasn't my time to learn any of the bigger stuff yet. So yeah, he would run back and forwards across the road. He would do it, half a dozen times on the way down and half a dozen times on the way back. When I was doing the patrol, walking around all the buildings, making sure that they're locked and everything, we would have a thing. We have a test that is called a touch probe, and it's like a remote control size and shape, and it's got a little laser thing on it, and you've got to actually physically put it on like a little silver disc that's about that big, and it registers that you've been at that point. You take it back to the office and you download it at the end of the day. And it tells the client, and the powers that be, that you are doing what is supposed to be done. Because we were one of the major licensee contractors for Chubb, Warmald and Southern Cross. So we looked after a lot of their clients for them. And the majority of their clients were under the touch probe system. So you couldn't fudge it. It's not like the guys could fudge it, lock the gate, say they checked everything, but didn't really, because they actually had a thing that they had to take down and get out of the car after doing the big drive and actually physically touch it to something. I'd be walking around hitting the touch probe points, making sure the doors, checking the windows, just generally keeping a lookout for any of the alarm lights or that might come on that I might need to then call someone. And all the time, he would be just around in the background, He'd pick up, like out in the bush, we have these weird fruits that grow. And the goats love them, they eat them all, the wild goats. But they're like a soft paddy melon, I guess they're like a paddy melon. And he'd pick it up, those, and he'd throw that at me. And when they hit the ground, when if you throw them and they hit the ground, it's like throwing a miniature watermelon. What happens when you throw that little miniature whole ball watermelon? It's going to hit the ground and it's going to go, isn't it? I was his amusement. Whenever I had to work on that night, we had to do that run, I was his amusement. He would pick them up and he would throw them at me and they'd hit the ground beside me and explode. And I'd go, you got me again, you bastard. Just stop it, all right? I know I am your amusement. I know you find it incredibly funny. But come on, mate. I thought we were friends. I thought we were mates. Really? Thought we had an understanding here. And you would hear him giggle and chuckle. And it's, I can't really do it. Sort of sound.
Yeah.
This sort of very low, bassy, guttural, hearty, deep chuckle. It would be. And he would, I was his live action TV, I guess. So that would happen. When I went camping, I knew that he was around and I would know when the other one was around. And yeah, the Yowies are a bit different to your Sasquatch.
Yeah.
In as much as I would say that your Yowie, your Sasquatch are probably a bit more bolder in their approach and what they do. They have a boldness about them that they don't have a problem with going and walking up on someone's front porch. They don't have a problem with walking into someone's chicken coop that's just, 2 meters from the house. Yeah, that will happen here, but it will only ever happen cover of darkness. You always hear it, you won't necessarily see it. The only time you will see them as such is if they're actually physically, deliberately putting themselves out there, or it's a major mistake. Or you actually catch them looking in a window, because they're a lot more reclusive again than your guys are. One thing I have from talking to different people and even having this conversation with David was that, yeah, they are. Your guys definitely have a boldness and I don't care sort of thing about them. Our guys are a lot more elusive and reclusive. Ours are a bit more like that old woman that lives in the house on the hill that has all the cats, and everyone thinks is a bit crazy, and everyone talks about the old bat that lives at the top of the hill on her own. They're that sort of way. They like to be that old bat that's on her own, doing her own business, minding her own business, and you lot stay out of mine. That's the sort of approach that our guys have. Yes, we can become their television or their live action movie as such. At times, yes. They can be very full on. They don't like people going into the bush and camping and then, someone standing there if you're talking about it, and I say a non-believer standing up and going, oh, I don't believe in that. They're a load of bullshit, rah, 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 and putting on the big tough bravado act. I could guarantee you they are going to be frightened out of their wits by the end of that camping trip, if not before. It's like they can pick out the ones that have that bold ego bravado-ness about themselves.
Yeah.
They look at those guys and it's like I don't know, again, they might be there giving off a particular energy. I do know that they're very grounded and very connected with energy. Purely by the fact that they can do what they have done, in putting a conversation or a line of words or a sentence or whatever in your head that you didn't think it, that was just put there by them.
Yeah.
They are very adept at that. They are masters of it. They are also masters of cloaking and hiding. I do believe that they have some form of ability to sort of not full-on cloak. We're not talking cloaking like Matrix or Star Trek here, but they have. I do believe that their fur or hair is made up of a similar compound to what like polar bear's fur or hair is. Yeah. In that, if you look at a polar bear sample and you hold that up to the light, it's almost see-through. You can almost see through it. It's almost translucent. And they have discovered that that's part of the reason why they are so adept at being able to hide where they are. It's not that they're white, it's that they're first translucent and you're just seeing the white coming through it. I do believe that their fur has that ability, so that when they are standing there, one could be standing there for all intents and purposes in plain sight, and you're not going to know it. Yeah. build some incredible structures. Absolutely incredibly mind-blowing. One day, if we can, what I might do actually is send you the photos, because I might probably lose service down there by the river. Where we are, we have good service spots and some big long stretches of bad service spots. And right smack down in the middle of one of those bad service spots. And it's ironic that it's in the middle, that a lot of them are things that I've noticed too, are in areas where there is bad telephone service. But downriver at the Third Causeway, there is some amazing structures. And put it this way, there is every single bit in that area that people have described.
MJ?
Now, our guys, their tree structure's a little messier, where our guys aren't, as precise and pretty as your guys. Or that they do a bit more rough and ready put together. But looking at it, you can still see it. There's still a bloody 12-foot high TP.
Let me interrupt you. We ran out of time. I wanted to see if we could pick this back up, possibly tomorrow, for episode number 2.
Absolutely. Absolutely. More than welcome, darling. And yeah, 12-foot high. I nearly died when I saw it yesterday. 12-foot high TP.
Wow.
Why would a human need to do that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll let you leave that with you there and let you think about it for a while.
Well, let me tell the audience. So guys, as we're going to be leaving for this episode, we will be coming back either tomorrow or when MJ is ready to come back for episode 2. And we're going to get more into her past lives, ghosts that she has seen, and the forest that she lives around with the missing 4-1, and the Piliga Princess. That's a very interesting one too.
Oh yeah, the princess. Phil, I have a very soft spot for that lady.
Now, before we go, is there any closing comments you want to give the audience, MJ?
Just thank you for listening. Thank you for all those that are being respectful and nice. For anybody that doesn't believe me, well then, that's on you. That's your prerogative. That's your choice. I've got my choice of free will, just like you. No skin off my nose. I'll still be your mate.
Peace to the world.
At the end of the day, all I want is for what I have learned or what I know, or is that if it can help one person either come to terms with something or move forward with something, I've done my job. Simple as that. And one thing that was told to me very close, always remember we're always this. And always remember, nobody's going to join you in a pity party. So what's the point?
Yeah, that's right.
But thank you. It's been lovely chatting with you and being able to share with your audience and your viewers. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you soon.
All right. Well, thank you, MJ, for coming on. Thank everybody for coming on and watching this episode. Like I said, she'll be back for episode 2. We still got plenty to talk about. So thank you guys, and I hope you all have a great evening. And I'll see you guys later.
If you have any questions, keep them up and shoot them through.
Yes, you can message.
And I'll see what I can do about answering comments.
And you reach her on her profile through the live that we are connected on. And if you guys have any questions, I'll just send you her way. So, hope you guys have a great evening, and I'll see you guys later.